What's up, everybody? It's Yong here with my first impressions of The Division. The game is finally out, and many of you are probably wondering, is it any good? In this video, I will talk about my experiences with the first 10 hours or so of the game. Now, for the beta, I played the PS4 version of the game, but for my review playthrough, I decided to get the PC version, and right off the bat, I noticed significant improvements in the controls. Aiming and shooting feels much more precise, and switching between weapons is much snappier. In the PS4 version, you tap triangle once to switch between primary and secondary weapons, and you double tap triangle to switch to your sidearm. While this works adequately enough, it isn't always responsive, particularly during frantic shootouts. Double tapping triangle to switch to your sidearm can be especially cumbersome. But in the PC version, switching between primary, secondary, and sidearm is as simple as tapping 1, 2, and 3 respectively. It's a small thing, but it makes a big difference. The more precise aiming and shooting, coupled with a more efficient weapon switching system in the PC version, makes what was already some solid shooting mechanics even better. Unfortunately, one problem that persists is the frustrating rolling mechanics. It's still mapped to the same button as taking cover, in the PC version's case, space. Tap space once and your character will take cover. Tap space twice and your character will roll towards the direction you're running. The problem with this setup is that oftentimes, especially when there are obstacles around, you will find your character alternating between rolling and taking cover when your intention is to repeatedly roll away, which leads to a lot of disorientation and, during combat situations, death. They really need to assign a separate button for rolling. On top of that, I also wish that the rolling animation and distance would be shortened. While it's fine for wide open areas, when there are a bunch of obstacles around, especially indoors, colliding onto objects will become a common occurrence, and when that happens in this game, your character sort of becomes stuck on the obstacle until the full rolling animation finishes. Now, the animation is only like 1.5 seconds long, but when enemies are spraying you with bullets while you're stuck mid-animation, it can feel like forever. Rolling overall feels really stiff and needs more polish. Fortunately, the cover mechanics are really great. I especially love being able to point at a distant cover and hold down space to automatically move to it. The pathfinding for the cover system is really sophisticated and never missed a beat as far as I could tell. Definitely one of the coolest features in the game. The cover system isn't perfect though, it's a little bit too sticky at times. I did find myself struggling to get out of cover on multiple occasions. So overall, the game's core mechanics are solid and even better on the PC, but there are noteworthy problems that can occasionally make combat frustrating. Moving on, let's talk about graphics. The game looks a little better on the PC, but if you weren't impressed by what you saw on the PlayStation 4, then the PC version won't add enough extra graphical kinks to change your mind. But I think the game looks quite good anyway, regardless of which version you get. Still not as good as what was originally shown at E3 a few years back, but few will argue that The Division has fantastic presentation and atmosphere. I noticed a few graphical bugs here and there on occasions, but overall very solid visuals. It's not all good news though. From my experience, The Division seems to be poorly optimized for PC. I've got a relatively powerful rig that packs an Intel Core i7-4770K clocked at 3.5 GHz, 16 gigs of RAM, a GTX 980 Ti GPU, and you name it, it's a pretty powerful device. Yet for whatever reason, I can't seem to get the game to run at a consistent 60 frames per second in 1080p at high settings. The frame rate problems are more persistent in the overworld. While I do get consistent frame rates indoors, outside during nighttime, or anytime there isn't much sunlight, when I'm outside and it's bright and sunny, I only get an average of around 40 frames per second, sometimes less. I'm not sure if the problems are on my end or if other PC players are struggling with this as well, but what I do know is that I seldom struggle to play games at a consistent 60 frames per second in 1080p on my rig. If you have any feedback you can offer regarding this matter, definitely let us know in the comments below. Graphics aside, let's talk about what the overall experience of playing the game has been like so far. For me, there are 4 main draws to The Division: character progression, loot, co-op, and the dark zone. Everything else is just whatever. Didn't really care much for the story, for example. It's decent enough to keep players moving from mission to mission, but so far, there hasn't been much substance beyond your typical bland pandemic disaster story. Then there's the missions themselves. Unfortunately, every mission I've played so far had the exact same structure, which is to go from point A to point B, clear out an area of enemies, occasionally activate something, hold off a swarm of enemies, rinse and repeat until you reach the boss, and then kill the boss. And by boss, I mean much spongier versions of regular enemies backed up by more goons. While there's enough fun to be had with missions as far as shooting goes thanks to solid mechanics and diverse layouts, if you expected a decent amount of variety and interactivity for the missions, expect to be disappointed. It also doesn't help that I have yet to see much enemy variety within each of the game's factions. Also lackluster was the game's character creation. There are only a handful of generic faces and hair to choose from, with no option to change the position or shape of individual facial components, so expect to find very little variety in player avatars as you play the game. Where The Division lacks in story, mission, enemy type, and avatar variety is made up for with satisfying character progression, flexible RPG mechanics, and an extensive loot system. As your character levels up, you'll be able to equip higher level weapons and armor, of which there are plenty of in this game. This is one area in which the game isn't lacking in variety. Weapons can even be customized with mods to enhance both their appearance and effect, which is fantastic. On top of that is the game's base of operations rebuilding system, which seamlessly ties into character progression. Basically, your base has 3 wings tied to your 3 skills, talents, and perk trees: medical, tech, and security, and you unlock skills, talents, and perks as you rebuild components in your base's wings, which cost supply points earned from missions. What you choose to build and in what order is up to you, and what skills, talents, and perks you want to prioritize. Skills are basically active abilities that you can assign to 2 quick access slots, Q and E on PC. Talents are equipable passive skills that you can mix and match on a maximum of 4 slots for various enhancements. And perks are passive skills that are persistent once unlocked. The ability to mix and match skills and talents, along with the ability to mix and match weapons, pave the way for great flexibility for developing your own playstyle. I, for example, like to play a tactical sniper style of gameplay, so I wield a powerful silent sniper rifle as my primary weapon and use the Seeker Mine as one of my skills for any enemies outside my line of sight. But in case they get too close, I have equipped a powerful machine gun as my secondary weapon to spray any enemies who dare approach. And just in case I do get beaten down, I have the first aid skill with the Overdose mod at the ready, which significantly heals my health when used. Mods are basically another layer to skills. Each skill has 3 mods to choose from and switch between, and they are basically enhanced variations of active skills, also unlocked by rebuilding your base. Playing around with skills, skill mods, talents, and perks, finding new loot and exploring weapon combinations and mods, and feeling your character progress as they level up are definitely the Division's greatest strengths. The experience becomes even more enjoyable when playing with friends or even random people who you find online via matchmaking. The Division can definitely feel stagnant when playing alone, but when playing in a cooperative environment, the game can be quite fun. Beyond the Division's PvE area is the infamous Dark Zone, the game's highly unpredictable PvP area. This is where you'll find the best loot in the game, but the catch is that any loot collected there will only be cashed in after you extract it for decontamination, and if you die or are killed before doing so, you will drop your loot for anyone to pick up. And with the ability to kill other players at any given moment at the expense of going rogue, you never know when, where, or how you'll get stabbed in the back. The Dark Zone can be as infuriating as it can be gratifying. When you find awesome loot or successfully steal loot from others, and when things go your way, it's pretty awesome. But when your hard-earned loot is taken from you by assholes, it's despair at its purest. Now, I will say that finding the loot itself is pretty boring. You either kill spongier versions of the game's PvE enemies and hope they'll eventually drop something, or you scavenge the ravaged city and find containers with loot, which quickly becomes stagnant and repetitive. But there are thrills to be had when making your way to the extraction zone to secure your loot, thanks to a constant feeling of paranoia from knowing that any player you meet along the way could turn on you at any time. The extraction zone in particular is where a lot of betrayals can happen, as it's basically a magnet for players with loot, so these areas often feel like Mexican standoffs waiting to happen. Now, from my experience, the dark zone shines brightest when going rogue, but you have to be smart about it. I, for one, found myself stalking my prey, pretending to help out, and waiting until they were alone before delivering a quick succession of precise strikes to quickly incapacitate them. When it works and you manage to take their loot, it's an incredible feeling. This is then followed by the rush of being marked as a rogue agent, a wanted target until the rogue timer runs out. Rogue agents who manage to survive the timer are rewarded with Dark Zone currency, will return to non-hostile status, and will retain all the stolen loot, or at least until another player decides to return the favor. Now, while the rogue timer is active, because of the great rewards that come with killing rogue agents such as Dark Zone experience points and currency, as well as all the contaminated loot they're holding, expect to be hunted down. So at that point, it becomes a game of hide and seek and run, and I found myself at the edge of my seat as the rogue counter ran down to 0, or as I faced off against other players. And when you finally manage to successfully extract all the stolen loot, the gratification is immense. I recognize that it's weird for me to be encouraging the one thing that can bring the most dread in the Dark Zone, but it's that relationship between despair and gratification that makes the Dark Zone so unique. It's definitely not for the faint of heart. The game doesn't lie when it says that the Dark Zone is a cruel place, but if you can bear with the cruelty and stick with it, I think you will eventually experience some great and memorable moments. Now, I'm not encouraging that you solely play as a rogue agent. Definitely prioritize finding loot the proper way because A, you want new equipment as you level up, and B, because dying in the Dark Zone results in loss of Dark Zone experience points and currency, so you don't want to be reckless. But when things get drab or nothing exciting is happening, going rogue can be the spark that can turn the Dark Zone from something stagnant to something legitimately exciting. So the bottom line from my first 10 hours with the game is that I found myself surprisingly addicted to The Division. Now, if you're going into The Division expecting a great single-player experience, you will most likely be disappointed. Despite the solid core mechanics, fun combat, and addictive character progression and looting, the story is quite bland and uninteresting, and missions sorely lack in variety. But as a multiplayer game, being able to take your personalized character and team up with friends or random people to tackle difficult missions together, or being able to try your chances in the cruel and unpredictable Dark Zone is where I enjoyed myself the most. The only question now is whether the game will feature enough content to keep me hooked for another 100 hours, or if the novelty will wear off in just a couple days. I will let you know in my upcoming full review. So there you have it, folks, my first impressions of The Division. Thank you for tuning in. Let us know in the comments below about your experiences with the game so far. And to be further updated on gaming news, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out!